John George Jones is a name that you probably don't recognise, and if you do recognise it, then you're going to have this image in your head. John George Jones is synonymous with this image and the two games that accompany it. But here's the thing about those two games. They are beyond awful. Go to Hell, for example, is not a good game. It's not a game that was good at the time, nor is it a game that can be looked back on as something that was misunderstood, a hidden classic, a piece of gaming history that the world wishes it hadn't overlooked. John George Jones basically took some of the doodles he'd likely scribbled in his schoolbooks and then tried, and failed, to turn them into a game. Go to Hell is boring, it's tedious, it looks like an absolute mess, it sounds like a broken monitor, and it is unnecessarily difficult to get absolutely anywhere in the game. As with most games released on the ZX Spectrum by those who wanted to take the easiest route possible, Go to Hell is a maze game. That is to say, you wander around aimlessly until you find a thing you need, and then you carry on wandering some more. Enemies spawning, you shoot the enemies, that sums up the entire game. But just as an additional twist to the formula, every wall also damages you, because this is hell, both in terms of the subject and in terms of playing the damn thing. And normally I'd hate covering a game like this, because as far as gameplay is concerned, there's literally nothing to talk about. But then I started to read the reviews and, well, look, Hell has been depicted in some pretty gruesome forms throughout history. Real graphic stuff that shows the abject torture you're about to spend eternity in, just because you looked at your neighbour's wife and thought she had a nice arse. Compare that to the crudely drawn stuff in Go to Hell, and you probably do a little inward chortle at the quaintness of it all. But my gosh, did reviewers at the time lose their shit over this video game depiction of hell.
In this nightmare world, you'll be distracted by horrible events taking place around you. Heads being crushed, victims on the racks, heads being sawn through, and masses of other equally revolting scenes. This game is full of revolting, crude, and downright vile images. Now, I'm going to give 666 the benefit of the doubt and assume that my reaction was exactly as they had hoped for. Let's see if they're right, and maybe they can sell lots of games to punters who only want to buy it because it's so horrid.
Oh, that's so disgusting.
Bad taste carried to extremes is the concept of the first release from 666. An ominous name if ever there was one. The walls are composed of the bodies of the damned or fiery pits. And the whole vile picture is set against a background of sound which can best be described as a sinister squelching, like somebody walking in squeaky shoes over pieces of raw liver.
I hate that noise. Calm your tits, lads. I don't think the Pope is going to come to Maidenhead and condemn the thing. It's schlock, first and foremost, and there was clear intent to make this game as schlocking as possible in order to garner just any sort of response. What's more surprising is that the game cover actually shows a level of restraint that the game didn't bother with. Go to Hell was released in 1985, and it's not until 1987 that we get John George Jones' de facto schlock epic, a game which is also barely playable, but it's the one where I finally began to understand the type of person I was dealing with. Soft and Cuddly takes the irony of its name and spearheads a platform game that is essentially a walkthrough piece for Jones's grotesque artwork. It's a museum of Soft and Cuddly, unlike its predecessor, is absolutely bizarre to look at, and Jones clearly spent some time on getting this artwork to sing using the Spectrum's garish colour palette, where his previous depiction of hell felt like it could have fallen out of the mind of any 13-year-old. Soft and Cuddly's blood-drenched images are blown up to a degree that they just hit better. There's a level of respect to be had for someone who's trying to push the boundaries of taste and doing it well. It's just that, once again, the game is incomprehensible bollocks. It's borderline broken. There is zero game design. It's pump.
Hey,
So where am I right now?
Where do I come from? And where am I going?
There is nothing here!
But the artwork is what stands out, and it clearly stands out for others too, because it's pretty much the only thing you'll hear people say about the game. And it dawned on me that John George Jones actually wasn't here to make games. He was here to make art. Grotesque art, sure, but art all the same. The revelation was compounded by a cassette inlay that said he was actually a musician. What game developer would list themselves as a musician first and foremost? The alarms went off in my head at that point, and so I searched for more information. Finally came across an interview with him in Sinclair User magazine. Prepare yourselves for this.
Hello, Mr. John Paul Jones, Hello, Mr. John George Jones. I've got some questions from the magazine for you. It says on the cassette inlay that you're a singer, songwriter. How do you go involved with computers then?
What star sign are you? What year were you born? Leo, eh? They're usually tossers, but I think you may be okay. Anyway, going a long way back, I wrote this art program and took it round to lots of people, and a few said they were interested, and then they turned around a month or so later and just said, "Who are you?" So I wrote "Go to Hell" as a kind of reply to them.
Whatever possessed you to write soft and cuddly, it's pretty horrible.
It was much more disgusting in the original version. The babies in the game were originally being ripped apart, and the sheep was bouncing up and down on a corpse. I didn't write the game because I'm a horrible person. I wrote it to amuse myself. I love the reaction people give. I can't stand nice, inoffensive things like Jimmy Tarbuck and Terry and June. They drive me up the wall.
I don't suppose that there are many programmers or programs around that you like much at the moment.
No, they're all rubbish. Everything ever written has been useless. Like when Jet Set Willy appeared, everyone screamed hallelujah, but it was nothing. My game is the best game ever written. You should have given it 10 stars.
What sort of place do you live in?
Exeter. It's a horrible place, but I live with my girlfriend Wendy, and she's a Pisces, and she's very cuddly. I have a rabbit called Abu Chanab. My dad invented the name because it sounded stupid.
What do you like to eat?
Curries, lots of curries, and go bars too. They're great, nutty with chocolate on the outside. My hair looks really stupid on the inlay cover. They've painted some of it out. I look like Mark Almond.
If you could have a head transplant, whose head would you have?
Mine. There was this guy in America who had all this plastic surgery so he'd look like Michael Jackson. That's just totally sad. You should be happy with yourself.
Do you believe in God?
He doesn't have much to do with me. Jehovah's Witnesses are the worst people in the world, though. Jehovah's Witnesses are the worst people in the world, though. They should be shot.
What sort of music do you like?
Peter Hamley's great. He was in a band called Vandergraaf Generator, and he invented punk, not John Lydon. Kate Bush is quite nice. She's very shilling. Fish writes lousy lyrics. He thinks he's got something to say, but he hasn't. Anyway, I know that I'm better than any of them.
And following on from that question about music, what do you think of the recent investigations into cryogenic operations?
I don't care, really. I don't mind dying because I'm a Scorpio. I have 12 lives and I've already had 3. What was I before this life? I don't think I was Adolf Hitler. He was a Gemini.
What is your favourite TV advert?
Oh, I don't know. I like the Worthington Best Bitter one at the Battle of Waterloo, and I like the Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie one for cigars.
Do you enter those competitions that say you have won a chance to enter a draw for £150
No, I just send back the envelopes with insults in them.
What annoys you most?
Games players, I think. They should be shot. I hate false modesty as well.
What is your favourite pastime?
I don't really have a pastime. Music is what I do. I like writing down what I feel. Life can be a bit boring at times.
Do you like books? What is your favourite book?
Ah yes, Throwback by Tom Sharp is brilliant. It's got a very complicated plot.
How long do you think computers will be interest you? Do you think you interest computers?
I've already lost interest. Most of the people who use them are boring. Hackers are just totally sad. Soft and Cuddly is for people who are bored with the other lousy games and want something new.
Finally, is there anything you'd like to leave us to think about?
Yes, Mozart and Shakespeare were rubbish. And can I say hello to Alan and Dave?
Okay, thank you, John Paul Jones, George. Bye.
John George Jones was not a game developer. He was an artist, a provocateur, a boundary-pushing gore fanatic. He might also have been a massive wanker, unconfirmed, but first and foremost, games were clearly not his passion. They were simply another canvas he used to put his stuff out there, and for whatever reason, he just so happened to find exposure through these two games in particular. Can I find any piece of evidence of any music he ever created? No. Can I find any information on what happened to him after the release of Soft and Cuddly? No. But one thing is for certain. Those who played either of his games back in the mid to late 80s remember them, because they looked unlike anything else available at the time. They might have been on the verge of barely playable, and the graphical horrors on display may well, in the present day, seem nothing more than childishly provocative, but in much the same way that horror films of the past may seem laughable to modern audiences who are used to, I don't know, a scary nun. Actually, no, this was a terrible comparison. Modern horror films are shit. Go and watch some proper horror films. Anyway, my point is, call John George Jones what you want. A hack, a fraud, a charlatan. His games are remembered not for the games he created, but for the shock value he poured into them. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is really down to perspective, but his games are remembered. And while he couldn't pull off the one thing a game requires, gameplay, he's still there, floating around in the minds of those who attempted to play them, but then inevitably stopped playing them soon after because they were shit. Isn't that what art truly is? I'm not sure I've made my point here. It's in there somewhere. Go and dig it out.